another episode of Sex and the Watchtower. Let's see what horrible advice the Watchtower had to offer young Jehovah's Witnesses in 1994. This article is from the Awake magazine, and it's entitled, Toying with Immorality. What's the harm? You know, I really need to know, is there anyone on the planet who has ever actually asked this question?
One day, my boyfriend came over when my mother wasn't home.
Oh my.
Supposedly just to watch TV, recalls Laura. At first, he just held my hand. Then all of a sudden, his hand started to wander. I was afraid to tell him to stop. I thought he would get upset and want to leave. Laura and her boyfriend thus started down a path that led deeper and deeper into misconduct. Passionate kissing gave way to yet graver improprieties.
My.
First of all, it is clear that Laura has learned the lessons of a Jehovah's Witness girl quite well. You can't say yes, but you can't say no. I'm going to just go out on a limb here and say that if somebody went from holding my hand to groping me, full-on groping me that quick, I wouldn't just tell him to stop. I'd make him stop. Meat of the nuts ought to do it. Ah! Ah! Girls, if you're afraid to tell him to stop, then there's a problem. You're doing both of you a disservice. He doesn't know that you aren't consenting, which is a huge problem because he could argue that he didn't even know anything was wrong. And if you did tell him to stop and he pitched a little bitch fit and threatened to take his blue balls and go home, well, it would seem to me that you've actually dodged a bullet here. Find a boyfriend who actually cares about you and doesn't treat you like an object that exists solely for his pleasure, please. Go find a worldly guy. As for passionate kissing and grave impropriety, well, the only problem I see here, aside from us not knowing how old these people are, because that could be important, is that she wasn't totally into it.
Few in today's world, though, would frown on such conduct. Why, surveys show that the vast majority of youths in the United States have had sex relations by the time they are 19. Heavy kissing and even the fondling of intimate areas of the body are viewed as little more than a harmless pastime. Some youths boast about how far they have gone in their sexual explorations.
Well, most Jehovah's Witnesses are actually married by the time they're 19, aren't they? So, I mean, technically they're kind of contributing to this alarming statistic. Jesus, people. Kissing and fondling each other is not a pastime like baseball or video games. And yes, some immature, possibly repressed youths do boast about how far they've gone in their sexual explorations when they're 13. And most of them are total liars. And everybody knows it. Look, talking about sex can be kind of cool and interesting. And it can also be kind of gross and off-putting. Boasting would certainly fall into the latter category, but it's typically not mature people who kiss and tell. I mean, it's disrespectful.
One who goes too far in displays of affection can suffer emotional harm. This is because, as an article in 17 magazine reminds us, the different ways people can touch each other can be just as intimate and intense as intercourse is.
There's actually an ellipsis in that quote. And you know what that means? Watchtower has omitted something. Come on, please tell me who has suffered emotional harm as a direct result of displays of affection. So you kiss your girlfriend, maybe pat her on the ass, whatever, and suddenly you are emotionally harmed? Or is the emotional harm because someone saw you and reported you to the elders, and now you're both in a judicial committee being shamed and threatened with total ostracism? Because that actually makes sense.
So, whereas kissing and petting may be physically exciting, girls in particular may find that the experience leaves them feeling empty and hollow emotionally. The Journal of Marriage and the Family notes, women report feelings of fear, guilt, anxiety, embarrassment, and even disgust.
That's because they've been conditioned to feel shame in response to sexual pleasure. Because they've been brainwashed by articles like this one and told that having sexual feelings makes them sluts. They've been told that losing their virginity makes them unlovable and dirty and used and undesirable. This is not a natural response to making out with someone you love, or at least like. If you're like Laura a few minutes ago, you might feel a little anxious if this guy just kind of started randomly pawing at you in the middle of an episode of Scooby-Doo and you're kind of afraid to tell him to stop. I mean, I get that. But the emptiness and hollowness and fear, guilt, embarrassment, disgust, just because you kissed your boyfriend, maybe touched his wiener or something, I don't think so.
In a similar way, many youths today, especially girls, are exploited. Girls in particular usually have to be persuaded into crossing the bounds of propriety. According to the book The Complete Courtship by Nancy Van Pelt, one study revealed that the most prevalent line used by boys is, "If you love me, you'll let me." The author notes that males have used this line since the beginning of time.
Nancy Van Pelt was actually the wife of a Seventh-day Adventist preacher, and she published a book called The Complete Courtship in 1982. For those of you not so skilled at math, that was 12 years before this article was written. Now, I am absolutely certain that there was a more recent and, dare I say, more empirical source on this subject available. Anyway, again, they're acting here as if girls are pure as the driven snow with no sexual feelings whatsoever until tainted by the influence of a penis. And yes, sometimes girls aren't as ready to go as boys, and sometimes that's because they've been conditioned that way. Other times, they're just not really that into the boy. Still, other times, they just don't fucking feel like it, okay? But anyone who pressures you into doing something that you don't want to is an asshole. End of story. You know, I had a guy try to use the "if you loved me, you would" line on me one time, and you know what I said? "Congratulations, asshole. You just made sure I never will. But since you obviously only care about your own little huevos pequeños, I now know everything I need to know." Doors that way. You know what this is really about? Scarcity. This is basic economics, supply and demand. More girls than boys, coupled with the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses teach that boys are better than girls and that the most important thing for a girl to do is to get married. So if you get a Jehovah's Witness boyfriend, you're expected to keep him at all costs. This is part of why they're afraid to speak up and say no if they don't want to do whatever, because if they lose him, there might not be another eligible Jehovah's Witness brother in the vicinity for the foreseeable future.
But is someone who would draw you into behavior that is unclean and condemned by Almighty God really showing you love? Not according to God's word. That book reminds us that true love does not behave indecently.
You know what I think's indecent? Insinuating yourself into someone's most intimate relationships and passing judgment on them. Demanding incredibly detailed and private information as part of that judgment process. If you've ever been in a judicial committee, then you know exactly what I'm talking about here.
Writer Nancy Van Pelt asks, if he does get what he wants, what proof will you have that he loves you when it is all over? More likely he used you.
Oh my.
So are we to understand from this that girls and women should withhold sex until they have some sort of proof that they're the love of this male creature's life and that he will belong to them forever after they give it up? I mean, this is ridiculous and sexist and pretty demeaning, actually. What about the boys who've been pressured by girls? Or other boys? What about the situations where the girl wants to get frisky and the boy's a little bit more reticent? Oh, you don't think that happens? Well, let me tell you, it does. There are many, many women whose sex drives are in much higher gear than our partners are. And you know what that says about us and about the people who love us? Not a goddamn thing.
When a boy pressures a girl into violating her Christian training and conscience,
they just admitted that they've been conditioned and trained.
He makes a mockery of any claim that he genuinely loves her.
So if he is pressuring her to do something that she clearly doesn't want to, then okay, I can agree with what they're saying here. But many Jehovah's Witnesses read this as, if a boy is interested in touching a girl at all before marriage, then he doesn't really love her. That's what my mom taught us anyway. And that's bullshit.
And if the boy professes to be a Christian, he makes a mockery of his professed Christianity. A girl that gives in to this intimidation is exploited, used, cheapened. Worse, she has committed an unclean act, perhaps even fornication, which is a gross violation of God's law.
God, this shit is infuriating. Once again, the value and worth of a female is based on her sexual status. As long as she's a virgin, she's only a weaker vessel, a feminine one who isn't quite as smart or as important as the boys. But once she has sex, she's a dirty, used weaker vessel, used and cheapened. Guys, I want you to look at your girlfriend, look at your wife. Do you think that having sex with you makes her used and cheap? If you do, you don't deserve her, and I hope she leaves your ass.
True, some girls are willing participants, but mutual agreement to do something wrong hardly makes it right.
Well, we all know that those girls are just Jezebels. If she's willing, she's a slut. And of course, it's always her responsibility to say no if no is going to be said.
A young man named Jack confesses what took place with his fiancée. At first, it was merely kissing, but next it became passionate kissing and heavy petting, once even to the point of our almost committing fornication.
Oh my.
I knew that what we were doing wasn't right according to Jehovah's standards. A youth named Vera, who likewise got involved in such misbehavior, admits that kissing and petting made her want to have sex relations. Sometimes that is exactly what happens.
And other times, they just wish it had.
The Bible shows that sin has a hardening effect on one's conscience.
Oh, I thought it had a hardening effect on something a little lower down.
As one becomes accustomed to taking improper liberties, badness can escalate. One sexual advance leads to another. Before you know it, confesses Laura, mentioned at the outset, you're involved in heavy petting.
Wait a sweet boy.
And it's only moments later that you're involved in fornication.
Oh.
You know, I just realized that I haven't run across one of their horribly detailed definitions of what heavy petting is yet. I mean, we don't even know what this means. Is heavy petting like French kissing and like squeezing boobies or over clothes, or are we talking hand jobs here? I mean, I feel like I need more information to know whether it's possible to proceed right from heavy petting to fornicating in mere moments. I mean, I kind of feel like fucking somebody's not an accident. They make it sound like it's something you could do without even realizing you're doing it. Like, oh, whoops, I was just going to pet that guy. And the next thing I knew, we were like, clothes fell off and woo! Blah, blah, blah. Rake fire together into his bosom. Blah, blah. Wait, he has bosoms?
Thus, toying with immorality has serious consequences and can even cost a Christian his or her hope for eternal life in God's new world.
Yes, youngsters, if you behave as your body is supposed to according to biology, Jehovah's going to kill you at Armageddon.
What if a couple fall into improper conduct? A man named John says, when my fiancé and I first started courting, our conduct was clean and kept on a high level. But one time we started kissing and petting almost to the point of committing fornication. It was then that I decided to speak with one of the elders in my congregation.
Wait, didn't they say his name was Jack before? I mean, it was almost the exact same experience, word for word, except now his name's John. I smell a rat. And here we see the expectation for young Jehovah's Witnesses who have made out with each other. Go tell on yourselves immediately. Now, this is another reason that being a young Jehovah's Witness is a very dangerous proposition, because you actually can't trust anybody. Your friends are likely to write you out for anything you do, even if you did it together, because they feel guilty or they are more brainwashed than you. Or sometimes you're the friend that's more brainwashed. Sometimes they even make shit up about you to draw attention away from themselves if they've been caught doing something forbidden. Now, this happened to my sister a lot as a teen. Another girl in the congregation got caught doing something or other, and instead of dealing with her own situation, she told the elders that my sister was pregnant. What the fuck? They came down on my sister like a ton of bricks. And you know what? This time there was no basis for that allegation whatsoever. Not that time anyway. I will confess that I was the snitch a couple of times when I was fully indoctrinated. And for that, I'm truly sorry. But y'all, this is what happens all the time. This is what we were taught to do. I mean, you are brainwashed to tell on yourself and your friends and your parents and anyone else. The witness is presented as if the elders will help you and offer you loving guidance. Y'all, this is a flat out lie. They will convene a judicial committee and demand every single gratuitous detail they can think of, and then they will punish you and publicly shame you, because that's helpful.
Yes, when a couple allows things to go that far, both need help. Do not deceive yourself into thinking that you can solve the problem alone.
Look, there is not a problem here. These people are presumably consenting participants at appropriate ages, meaning no 14-year-old, 35-year-old action, because that is actually statutory rape, y'all. If you have two teens, though, who are in love with each other, or at least dating, which is usually what's happening in these situations, they need to be taught about safety and birth control and consent and all those things. But making out and even having sex is not by itself a problem. They need to take responsibility for what they're doing, but it's their business. I mean, there's not some huge problem here that requires the intervention of a couple of old window washers in shiny suits.
I'd pray, help us not to do it again, confesses one youth. Sometimes it would work, but a few times it didn't. The Bible thus gives good advice when it says, call the older men of the congregation. These Christian overseers can give whatever counsel, advice, or reproof is necessary to get your relationship with each other, and more important, with God, back on track.
At least they're being minimally honest here by including reproof in the equation. But usually reproof is the starting point. It's not where they end. I mean, has anybody ever reported themselves or been reported by a sexual partner to the elders and then had them provide counsel and advice without punishment? Anyone? Ever? Because I have never, ever seen that happen. I mean, reproof is the lightest anyone can get off, unless you're the presiding overseer's daughter. Usually, people get disfellowshipped. Because, total ostracism and threats of death at Armageddon are totally appropriate punishments for doing something intimate, private, and biologically appropriate. Totally.
In the days of Noah, certain angels became so attracted to the beautiful daughters of men that these spirit creatures left their positions in heaven to come to earth. Their sexual union with women resulted in hybrid offspring called Nephilim.
Okay, I'm confused. I mean, aren't angels supposed to be spirits? And spirits don't actually have bodies, right? So how the hell could they have sex with women? I mean, do they have spirit penises? Are they like solid? Are there spirit sperm? I mean, how would those interact with an actual body? Actual human eggs? I mean, I don't believe in spirits at all, okay? But theoretically, spirits aren't solid. You can just like wave right through them. Hey, how would the sex even work? I mean, neither of them would feel anything at all, would they?
Since it is unnatural for spirit creatures to cohabit with humans, what the disobedient angels did with those women was just as wrong as were the homosexual acts later committed by the men and boys of Sodom. Although the mates of the angels perished in the floodwaters along with their hybrid children, the wicked angels shed their materialized fleshly bodies and returned to heaven, where they became the demon companions of Satan the devil.
In case you missed it, here we just heard the origin story of demons, along with a completely off-the-wall condemnation of homosexuals for good measure. And the poor women in this stupid-ass story, who may or may not have consented to any of this mess in the first place, and may not even have known that their dudes were not normal humans, are basically killed for having been taken advantage of, not to mention the resulting children. This is just wrong. So they do say that the angels materialized bodies. How the fuck did they manage that? I mean, I see a plot hole here. If that's possible, then how would you know that anybody you meet on the street isn't a rogue spirit who thinks that you're hot and wants to impregnate you with some kind of hybrid offspring? Don't you just love how the act of having sex and fathering children turned these supposedly perfect angels into demons? Y'all, this is every bit as preposterous as Zeus and his golden showers.
In view of this historical background...
What? Where? I have yet to see anything historical here. Where are the citations? Where are the references? I need evidence.
Do you see what kind of creatures the demons really are?
Imaginary ones?
They are sex perverts who are behind-the-scenes manipulators of this sex-mad world.
My.
Although they have been barred from again materializing as humans, they derive pleasure from the sexual perversions of those they can corrupt on Earth.
It's kind of news to me that the demons are primarily sexual in nature, because that wasn't really how I heard it growing up. I mean, the demons that we were afraid of did things like make stuff move by itself and make random noises and turn lights on and off or whatever. I mean, occasionally there were stories about them making a bed vibrate or making appliances like TVs and vacuum cleaners malfunction, or they made kid toys dance and curse and misbehave at the Kingdom Hall. I mean, there were a few salacious, sexually themed demon stories that went around, but mostly it was just stupid stuff that, looking back, I can't really even understand why it was scary. It was just vomiting noises and stuff. Now, let's talk about this sex-mad world. After listening to the near constant, overly detailed sexual subject matter in Jehovah's Witness literature, do you really think that the rest of the world is as sex-mad as the Jehovah's Witnesses are? I mean, I get that they're supposedly against sex in almost all its many forms, but 180 degrees from sick is still sick, guys.
The demons tried to subvert Jehovah's laws regarding chastity and morality by making them seem needlessly restrictive. These wicked angels advocate sexual immorality as a normal, pleasurable way of life.
Well, I mean, they don't have to work too hard, do they? I mean, the laws are needlessly restrictive and counterintuitive. I mean, if Jehovah didn't want humans to have sex or anything outside marriage, then the smart thing for him to have done would have been to make them incapable or uninterested in sex until they had a ring on their finger. But the whole idea of an almighty supreme being being so concerned about a man-made institution like marriage is just silly. I mean, if he wanted us all married off, if he existed, then he should have just made us that way from the start. I mean, this is silly and it doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. But let's move on to 1996, when the Watchtower published an article called, "Does God Accept Every Kind of Worship? Who cares?"
They also worshipped female companions of Baal, such as Asherah. The worship of Asherah involved the use of a sacred pole, believed to be a sexual symbol.
Man, Jehovah's Witnesses can make anything sexual. Anything!
Archaeologists working in that region have dug up numerous images of nude women. These images, states the Encyclopedia of Religion, feature a goddess with emphasized genitals holding up her breasts and probably represent Asherah. One thing is certain, Baal worship was often very immoral.
Is anyone here familiar with female anatomy? I mean, seriously, how do you emphasize female genitals? They're kind of tucked away, you know? I mean, seriously, she's wearing a long skirt and you can't even see her genital region at all. What are they talking about?
It is not surprising, therefore, that Baal worship included sex orgies.
Am I allowed to know why we're even talking about this? I mean, if this article is supposed to be about what kind of worship God accepts, meaning Jehovah, their God of choice, then why do we need to go into such detail about how people who are dead now in another country thousands of years ago worshipped other gods? Y'all, this is just witness porn.
Shechem, a Canaanite, raped the young virgin Dinah. In spite of this, he was viewed as the most honorable man in his family.
You know, I've heard some other theories about this encounter. Some theorize that this wasn't a rape at all and that Shechem and Dinah wanted to get married. Also, do you notice how they go out of their way to say that Dinah was a virgin? As if this was a rape, it's somehow worse than it would have been if she'd banged before. How does that make any sense?
Incest, homosexuality, and bestiality were common. The very word sodomy, a practice of homosexuals, comes from the name of a city that once existed in that part of the world.
So how do we actually know that these things were common, or more common than they are now? Because the rate at which these things are mentioned and discussed in Jehovah's Witness literature makes it seem like this stuff is even more common today. Regardless, though, what's the point here? Do they have one, or do they just enjoy talking about incest, homosexuality, and bestiality? I think that's actually what's happening here, folks.
Baal worship also involved bloodshed. Why, Baal worshippers would throw their children alive into flaming fires as a sacrifice to their gods.
Well then, it's really not a surprise that there aren't any modern-day Baal worshippers, huh? But think about this. First of all, we're still talking about dead people's worship of other gods in an article about what worship is acceptable to the Jehovah's Witness gods. And second, how is Baal worshipers sacrificing of their children really any different at its core than witnesses letting their children die rather than get a blood transfusion? Or disfellowshipping and shunning their children for minor infractions, or letting them be damaged and scarred for life by a pedophile within the organization who is never made accountable for his or her actions? They're sacrificing their children too, just a little more slowly and painfully. Don't let them lie to you. And speaking of that subject, our next article is from The Awake in 1997. It's called Sexual Exploitation of Children, a Worldwide Problem.
When Magdalene was 14, she was lured into a job as a hostess in a beer house in Manila, the Philippines. Actually, her work involved taking male customers into a small room and baring her body for their sexual exploitation. An average of 15 men a night and 30 on Saturdays. Oh. Sometimes when she said that she could not cope with it anymore, her manager would force her to continue. She often ended her day at 4 a.m, feeling exhausted, depressed, and miserable.
This is horrible. It's horrible. But I really wonder why the witnesses need to tell us how many men Magdalene had sex with on the average day. Would it have been better or worse if the number had been different? Or undisclosed? I mean, they're just so weirdly detailed and specific about this stuff. It's gross.
Sarun was a young orphan street boy in Cambodia. He had syphilis and was known to have gone out with foreigners. He was given living quarters in a pagoda where he was to be looked after by an ex-monk. This man, however, sexually abused the boy and procured him for sex with foreigners. When Sarun's living quarters in the pagoda were demolished, he began living with his aunt, but was still forced to work on the street.
Again, the situation described here is unspeakably horrible. But it's a really convoluted story, and there's some cleverly hidden messages in it if you look. So for some reason, this kid was allowed to live in a pagoda, which is in fact a religious building. For comparative purposes, this is a famous pagoda called the Silver Pagoda in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. So, this is what we are talking about. And why an ex-monk? Why was an ex-monk still living in the pagoda? I feel like there's more to this. So, we'll just assume that the people from the pagoda let Sarun live there because he needed somewhere to live. Okay. That's a good deed, right? The ex-monk turns out to be a pedophile and a child trafficker, which is terrible. And then for some reason, the pagoda was demolished. Well, that was unexpected. But then we find out that Sarun has an aunt. Why wasn't he living with his aunt before all this? And why does he still have to work on the street? And does this mean that he has to keep turning tricks, or does it mean that he's now doing road construction? I mean, this is just such a strange story. I feel like I'm on Days of Our Lives Third World Edition. And again, the Jehovah's Witnesses give us no clue about what actually happened to any of these children, because they don't care if the kids are okay or not. They don't care what happened to them. They just want to use them as an example, a cautionary tale, a gratuitous, sensational tale for Jehovah's Witnesses to clutch their pearls over.
These are but two examples of the terrible problem dealt with late last year at the World Congress Against Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children. How widespread is this practice? Hundreds of thousands of children are involved. Indeed, some say millions. One delegate summarized the problem. Children are bought and sold as sexual and economic commodities. They are trafficked within and across borders like contraband, imprisoned in brothels, and forced to submit to large numbers of sexual exploiters.
This is a huge problem in the world, and it definitely needs to be addressed. But I wonder, did the Jehovah's Witnesses participate in this World Congress? Are they involved in any way whatsoever in trying to help anyone find solutions? No. They don't care. They just want to use the profound exploitation and abuse of these children to strike fear into the hearts of their followers, because the implication here is that this is a worldly thing. This is a non-Jehovah's Witness thing. This is what happens to children in the world, not Jehovah's Witness children, because the only way to keep your kids safe is to indoctrinate them as Jehovah's Witnesses.
Many of the adults who sexually abuse children are pedophiles. A pedophile has a perverted sexual attraction to children.
Wait, wouldn't any sexual attraction to children be considered pedophilia? And why did they say most adults and perverted sexual attraction? As if there are adults who molest kids who aren't pedophiles? Or that there's such a thing as an unperverted sexual attraction to kids? What the fuck?
According to the Children's Ombudsman of Sweden, they are not necessarily aging slovenly men in raincoats or violent macho types. A typical pedophile is a well-educated middle-aged man, often working with children as a teacher, doctor, social worker, or a priest.
Oh wait, you left out elder, ministerial servant, pioneer, and field service partner.
The Swedish group brought up the example of Rosario, a 12-year-old Filipino girl who was sexually abused by a sex tourist, a doctor from Austria. His abuse resulted in her death.
Again, this is horrible and unconscionable, but again, the Jehovah's Witnesses are not offering any help or solution or even closure. What happened to this perpetrator? Did he get what was coming to him? Is he at least in jail somewhere? Or did he just lose his microphone privileges at the Kingdom Hall? And do you notice how they've said several times that pedophiles are teachers, doctors, priests, and clergymen? They're planting the message here that worldly people are not to be trusted because every Jehovah's Witness knows that there are never any pedophiles in their midst. Seriously, they can be faced with indisputable facts and still deny that these people exist in their congregations, just like my parents did. So they continue to protect the pedophiles. Great job, guys.
A Swedish TV program reporting on the Congress stressed the need for parents to keep better watch over their children and to alert them to the dangers. However, it advised don't just warn children against dirty old men because children thus think they should watch out for only elderly, slovenly men, while a person who commits such crimes could well be dressed in a uniform or a neat suit. Thus, warn them against strangers who take unusual interest in them. Of course, children should also be warned about and urged to report to authorities any person making improper advances toward them, including people they know.
But wait a minute. Did the Jehovah's Witnesses urge their children to report to the authorities if an adult makes improper advances toward them? Oh, hell no, they don't. No, they do not. I know this firsthand. If you don't have another person to corroborate your claims, and sometimes even if you do, the elders will tell you that there's nothing they can do. Just leave it in Jehovah's hands, which basically means sit down and shut up. And sometimes, even if you have multiple witnesses to the crime or multiple victims of the same perpetrator, they'll still tell you you have to leave it in Jehovah's hands. They do nothing. My parents were told not to go to the police because it would bring reproach on Jehovah's name, and I was told that being molested was, in fact, my fault. And as usual, instead of any action on the part of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the solution presented in this article is wholesale slaughter at Armageddon. So, what does that mean for Jehovah's Witness child molesters? As long as you're still in good standing with the Watchtower on the big A day, you're on your way to paradise. You know what? I can't do this anymore today. I have had enough of this shit. But don't worry. They had a lot more to say about child molestation in 1997. I think it's funny how they keep talking about it and not really saying anything worth hearing, because they just did this again in 2019. We'll get there eventually. Tune in next time for Sex in the Watchtower, episode number 8, where we delve further into the late 90s and maybe even Y2K. Until then, I'm Sister Fister. This is crazy.